Okay, this is A3, and it's our imperialism group. Imperialism, you may begin.
What was the most significant underlying cause of World War I? To answer this question, we need to look at the years leading up to the war. In the early 1900s, prior to World War I, tensions had heightened between the four major European powers. These tensions had sprouted from the robust imperialism of each power. Despite the effect that militarism, alliances, and nationalism had on the causation of World War I, imperialism was the most significant underlying cause in the outbreak of the World War, as imperialism not only established tensions between the four major European powers, but it also contributed to differentiating this Great War from its preceding war. The first reason is how the pursuit of imperialism caused tensions between the European colonizers. One example of this was Germany's intention to catch up to the French and the British Empire, who were both doing exceptionally well in their imperial conquests. This can be seen in document E, which shows the British octopus, that extends its tentacles all over the map on areas that they had colonized. Similarly, we can see this in document F, how the French had also been doing very well in their imperial conquests, as they had a colonial population of 56 million people. If the French and the British Empire had not been so driven by imperialism, Germans would have never felt intimidated and thus compelled to speed up their imperial conquests. This leads me to my second example. In order for Germany to catch up to the British Empire and the French, they interfered with the France's attempts at establishing their new colonies. In 1905, the German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, delivered a speech to Morocco, supporting their independence. This obviously agitated the French imperialists, as this disrupted their plans to establish a protectorate of Morocco. Then again, in 1911, when the Germans landed an armed vessel at the Moroccan port, they further provoked the French imperialists and brought these two countries to the brink of war. These tensions only grew with time and culminated in the outbreak of World War I.
All right. 148. One moment, please. Next speaker, may begin.
The question is what caused World War I? Imperialism was a significant factor in starting the war, but it also played a major role in allowing the war to grow to this magnitude, one that our world had not seen before. A great war that lasted 4 long years and involved countries from all around the globe. Imperialism, as already touched on by Speaker 1, was pivotal in building up the tensions that riled up the 4 major powers of Europe. But it also contributed to involving outside countries and colonies which did not necessarily need to be involved in this war. An example of this is Japan, a far-off country that joined the war for the purpose of expanding their empire. They joined the Allies because they had their eyes set on Germany's colonies in China, specifically Shantung. After joining the victorious Allies in World War I, Japan was granted these colonial territories under a League of Nations mandate. In other words, Japan was motivated by imperialism. Perhaps they would have never been involved in the war if they were not looking for ways to expand their empire. But not all countries and colonies around the world jumped in willingly. When Britain declared war against Germany in August 1914, Australia, as a dominion of the British Empire, was also automatically at war. British colonies alone took up to 12,740,000 miles and had a population of 400 million people, not to mention the other colonies of France, Belgium, etc. Due to imperialism, all of these places and populations created what then became the World War. Whether countries and colonies around the world wanted to or not, they were being roped into what started as a quick war in Europe. Imperialism was able to be the significant force necessary to start the war in the first place in the form of tensions, but also blow up the war to a large scale.
Great. Okay, 152. One moment.
Use the podium. Yes, okay.
Anthony, you may begin.
Okay, so when we talk about what started World War I, people tend to look at nationalist movements and the assassination as the main cause and the spark of the war. And this view is based on how the assassination caused Austria-Hungary to declare war on Serbia. However, if you look into the details, the assassination was a result of Austria-Hungary's failure at imperialism. Imperialism means a policy of extending countries' power and influence through colonization, use of military force, or other means. And when looking into the assassination, we can start to realize that the assassination was caused by a failure of imperialism on Austria-Hungary's part. From my source, History ASM, the army, it states that the Austrian-Hungary army was notably weaker in firepower, a critical deficiency. Its artillery peak was not only inadequate in number, but also the main obsolete. Basically, this states that Austria-Hungary's smaller army and weaker firepower meant that they were unable to maintain dominance over Serbia, which led to the decline of Austria-Hungary. Because of their inability to keep Serbia as a part of their country, this led to the forming of the Black Hand and eventually the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Basically, if the failure of imperialism never happened, then the assassination and the nationalist movements wouldn't have happened either. In this case, imperialism came first. It is a failure of imperialism that started the war.
Okay. Just a moment.
Facing the audience, unlike Kobe.
There we go. Marshall, let's.
What is this?
I don't know what it's called.
Marshall?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Maybe.
To conclude our group's argument, I'd like to go back to the big question. So, the two keywords over here are significant and underlying, and we have proved that. So the first speaker spoke about how imperialism was the most underlying cause of World War I. So there are numerous pieces of evidence to show this, and one piece of evidence that I think speaks volumes is Chancellor Bernhard's speech. So in his speech, he spoke about how Germany was getting their toes stepped on by other countries when they were trying to colonize Africa. And what he said is that in the coming years, in the coming century, the German people will either be a hammer or an anvil. Chancellor Bernhard clearly hints at war. And the sole reason for this is the tensions created by imperialism. The second speaker spoke about how imperialism was the most significant reason for World War I and how it influenced the decisions of countries around the globe to join the war. India, like many other countries, is a great example of the effects of imperialism. 1.78 million Indians fought on the side of the British due to imperialism, and imperialism was undoubtedly the most significant cause, as it made World War I truly a world war that is unprecedented in size and impact on the globe. The third speaker spoke about how the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was actually a failed attempt of imperialism by Austria-Hungary, proving that nationalism was not the underlying cause, but instead imperialism was. While World War I does have other causes that did affect it in smaller ways, it is clear that imperialism is the perfect answer to this big question, as it answers every aspect of the question thoroughly.
Wow. Great timing.
I need more people.
Okay, hold on just a minute, guys. I'm not quite there yet.
It was actually better than any speech I've
Yeah,
done.
I don't know.
We're so
So it's actually, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I don't know, I'm
Okay,
better
so
than
that's so it's me, you, Atar, me again. You can do this.
Can you guys help me with speaker order and
Yes.
include Jamie even if you're doing it?
So I'm one.
You're probably chatting to each other.
Like us two. Atar's the
So, yeah.
I'm taking notes on what they said wrong. I think you're taking notes on what they said.
Okay, so Jamie, and it's read by Arya, right?
Yes. And use my words.
Yeah. But you guys need to help me.
Hey, Mr. Ratter,
Uh-huh.
do we have time time between like this debate and the rebuttals?
Yeah, you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, darn it.
I don't have enough time.
I forgot to turn off the video.
It's just a friendly
If you
debate.
get